The morning sun cast long shadows across the dirt roads of New Haven Colony when the Zephyrian soldiers came for Danny Martinez. The 15-year-old boy was feeding chickens behind his family's small farmhouse when the gray uniforms appeared. At his gate, his mother, Maria, screamed from the kitchen window, but there was nothing she could do. Danny did not run. He had learned from his father that running only made things worse with bullies. Instead, he stood straight and faced the soldiers as they surrounded him. The lead soldier, a tall Zephyrian with silver markings on his armor, spoke in broken human language. "You are charged with giving food to enemies of the Empire," the soldier said. "You will come with us now." Danny looked back at his mother one last time. She was crying, her hands pressed against the glass. He wanted to tell her it would be okay, but he knew it would not be. Everyone on New Haven knew what happened to people the Zephyrians arrested. They did not come back. The soldiers put chains on Danny's hands and pushed him into their transport vehicle. As they drove through the town, other colonists watched from their windows. Some were crying. Others looked angry but helpless. The Zephyrians had been ruling New Haven for 3 months now, and everyone had learned to stay quiet when the soldiers came. The transport stopped at the town square, where a large crowd had already gathered. The Zephyrians had ordered everyone to come and watch. Those who did not show up would be punished later. Danny saw his teacher, Mrs. Brown, standing near the front. She was trying not to cry. He saw old Mr. Peterson, who ran the general store, and Sally Wright, who was only 12 years old. All of them looked scared. In the center of the square stood a metal platform that the Zephyrians had built 2 weeks ago. Everyone knew what it was for, but no one talked about it. On the platform was a tall pole with chains hanging from it. Around the platform were cameras and recording equipment. The Zephyrians wanted the whole galaxy to see what happened to people who did not obey. Commander Vextar stepped onto the platform. He was the leader of all Zephyrian forces on New Haven, and he enjoyed making humans suffer. His skin was gray and rough like stone, and his eyes were completely black. When he spoke, his voice was loud and harsh. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire," he said, speaking into the cameras. "Today you will see what happens to those who break our laws." This human child was caught giving food to criminals hiding in the forests. He chose to help enemies instead of obeying the Empire. Danny was pushed up onto the platform. The chains felt heavy on his wrists, but he kept his back straight. He had promised himself he would not show fear, no matter what happened. His father had taught him that brave people face their problems without crying or begging. The cameras focused on Danny's face. Across 17 different star systems, millions of beings watched on their screens. Some were humans living under Zephyrian rule. Others were different alien species who supported the Empire. All of them could see a 15-year-old human boy standing alone on a platform, waiting to die. "Look at this creature," Commander Vextar said, pointing at Danny. "So young, so weak. This is what humans are like. They cannot even teach their children to follow simple rules. They think they can hide food from us and help criminals escape justice." Danny wanted to speak, but he knew the commander would not let him. The Zephyrians did not care what humans had to say. They only cared about showing their power. The crowd in the square was completely silent. Even the children had stopped crying. Everyone watched as Commander Vextar walked around Danny, speaking to the cameras about human weakness and the strength of the Empire. He talked about how humans were too soft to survive in a galaxy ruled by stronger species. He said that humans cared too much about helping each other, and this made them easy to control. "This boy's father is not even here to save him," the commander said with a cruel laugh. "Human parents abandon their children when trouble comes. They are cowards who care only about themselves." Danny's face turned red with anger, but he still did not speak. He thought about his father, Colonel Jake Martinez, who had left months ago on a secret mission for Earth's military. His father did not know what was happening on New Haven right now. He did not know that his son was about to die on live television. The commander raised his plasma weapon and pointed it at Danny's chest. The boy looked directly into the camera, knowing that somewhere in space, someone might be watching who would remember him. He thought about all the families hiding in the forests. The ones he had brought food to when they were hungry. He thought about his mother, watching from somewhere in the crowd. He thought about his father, who had taught him to stand up to bullies no matter how big they were. "Do you have any last words, human child?" Commander Vextar asked, mocking him. Danny nodded. The commander seemed surprised that the boy wanted to speak, but he gestured for the cameras to focus on Danny's face. The boy's voice was clear and steady when he spoke. "My dad taught me that bullies only understand one language," Danny said, looking directly into the camera. "Tell him I remembered the lesson." Commander Vextar frowned, not understanding what the boy meant. He raised his weapon again, eager to finish the execution and move on to other business. The plasma weapon charged with a high whining sound that everyone in the square could hear. "Let this be a lesson to all who watch," the commander announced. "The Zephyrian Empire shows no mercy to those who break our laws, no matter how young or innocent they pretend to be." The weapon fired with a bright flash of blue light. Danny Martinez fell to the platform and did not move again. The crowd in the square gasped, and some people began to cry openly. Others just stared in shock at the small body lying on the metal platform. Commander Vextar turned back to the cameras with a satisfied expression. "This is the price of rebellion," he said. "Remember this moment when you think about disobeying the Empire. We will find you, and we will make you pay." The broadcast ended, and the cameras stopped recording. The crowd in the square began to scatter, walking home in silence. No one spoke about what they had just seen, but everyone would remember it for the rest of their lives. Far away in deep space, aboard a stealth reconnaissance ship called the Nightfall, Colonel Jake Martinez stared at his communication screen in complete silence. He had been monitoring Zephyrian broadcasts as part of his mission, gathering intelligence about enemy movements. He had not expected to see his own son's execution. For exactly 60 seconds, Jake sat perfectly still. His hands did not shake, his breathing did not change. He looked like a man made of stone. But inside his chest, something was breaking apart and being rebuilt into something much more dangerous. Then he reached for his communication controls and began making calls that would change the galaxy forever. 8 light-years away, his son was dead. But Danny's message had been received, and Colonel Jake Martinez remembered exactly what language bullies understood best: the boys. Death had been broadcast across 17 star systems as a show of Zephyrian power. Soon those same 17 systems would learn what happened when someone killed Jake Martinez's son. Colonel Jake Martinez sat in the darkness of his small cabin aboard the Nightfall for exactly 60 seconds after the broadcast ended. The communication screen still glowed with static where his son's face had been moments before. Danny's last words echoed in his mind like a prayer, and a promise rolled into one. The stealth ship drifted silently through space. 8 light-years from New Haven, Jake's mission had been simple reconnaissance, watching Zephyrian fleet movements and reporting back to Earth Command. It was supposed to be quiet work, the kind that kept him away from his family but helped protect them from a distance. Now his family was gone, and quiet was the last thing on his mind. Jake's hands moved across the control panel with mechanical precision. First, he activated the emergency beacon that would identify him to any Earth military vessel within range. Then he opened the priority communication channels that were reserved for the most serious military situations. Finally, he input the codes that would connect him directly to Earth Command, Mars Base, and the Deep Space Patrol fleets. Within 3 minutes, his communication board lit up like a Christmas tree. Admiral Lisa Park appeared on his main screen from Earth Command headquarters. Her gray hair was pulled back strictly, and her uniform was perfectly pressed. Even though it was the middle of the night on Earth, she had been woken up by the emergency signal. But her eyes were completely alert. "Colonel Martinez," she said, her voice crisp and professional, "report your status." "Admiral," Jake replied, his voice steady but carrying something that made Admiral Park lean forward in her chair. "They killed my boy. The Zephyrians executed my 15-year-old son on live television 30 minutes ago." The Admiral's expression did not change, but Jake could see her hands tighten on her desk. She had children of her own, and she understood. Exactly what those words meant. I watched them murder Danny on their propaganda broadcast, Jake continued. They chained him up in the town square and shot him in front of everyone. They wanted to show the galaxy how powerful they are by killing a child. Admiral Park nodded slowly. I understand, Colonel. Stand by for additional connections. The screen split as General Kevin Stone joined the call from Mars base. The general was a big man with scars on his face from the border wars, and his reputation for protecting human colonies was known throughout the military. Behind him, Jake could see staff officers moving quickly in the background. Martinez, General Stone said without introduction, we monitored the Zephyrian broadcast. The whole command staff watched it happen. That boy was brave. He was 15 years old, Jake said. They killed him because he gave food to hungry families hiding in the forest. They murdered my son to make a point about human weakness. Captain Ron Blake joined the call from the bridge of the dreadnought Vengeance. The massive warship was currently patrolling the Outer Rim, and Captain Blake had been fighting aliens longer than most officers had been alive. His face was hard as stone, but his eyes showed the same anger that was building in every human military officer across the galaxy. Colonel, Captain Blake said, my entire crew watched that broadcast. We've got 3,000 sailors aboard this ship, and every single one of them is ready to burn those gray bastards out of space. More officers joined the call as the news spread through human military networks. Major Sue Palmer connected from her stealth destroyer in the Alpha Centauri system. Lieutenant Ben Carter called in from the intelligence station on Asteroid Belt 7, Captain Amy. Rodriguez appeared on screen from the covert operations base near Jupiter. Each officer had the same expression on their face. Each one had watched Danny Martinez die on live television. Each one understood that the Zephyrians had crossed a line that should never be crossed. They think they know us, Jake said, addressing all the officers on the communication network. They think humans are weak because we care about our families. They think we're soft because we help each other. They just proved they don't understand what happens when you hurt our children. Admiral Park spoke first. All commanders, this is Admiral Park. I'm authorizing Operation Fury Protocol as of this moment. Colonel Martinez, your son's death will not go unanswered. Jake had heard of Operation Fury Protocol, but he had never seen it activated. It was the plan that human military leaders had developed for exactly this situation. When an enemy committed an act so terrible that normal military response was not enough, Fury Protocol gave commanders permission to use every weapon, every trick, and every dirty tactic in the human arsenal. General Stone's voice was like gravel when he spoke. All Mars base units are moving to combat status. I'm deploying the Hammer Squadron and the Volf Pack to the Outer Rim immediately. Those Zephyrian planets won't know what hit them. Captain Blake was already giving orders to his crew in the background. Vengeance is changing course for the Zephyrian supply lines. We'll cut off their food and ammunition before they know we're coming. The communication network exploded with activity as human military officers across the galaxy began coordinating their response. Ships that had been on peaceful missions suddenly changed course for Zephyrian space. Weapons that had been in storage were loaded and prepared for battle. Soldiers who had been resting were called to their stations. Major Palmer reported from her stealth destroyer. Shadow is already positioned near Zephyrian shipping lanes. We've been watching their supply convoys for months. I can start hitting their cargo ships within 6 hours. Lieutenant Carter connected from his intelligence post. All our agents in Zephyrian space are being activated. Every human civilian on those occupied worlds has been waiting for this signal. They're ready to fight. Captain Rodriguez, who ran the covert operations that most officers never talked about, spoke quietly but clearly. My people have been preparing for this day since the Zephyrians first invaded human space. Every occupied world has sleeper cells ready to activate. Every military installation has been mapped and targeted. Jake listened to the reports coming in from across human space. Ships were moving, weapons were being loaded, and secret plans that had been prepared for years were finally being put into action. The death of one 15-year-old boy was about to trigger the largest military response in human history. How long until we can begin operations? Admiral Park asked. Captain Rodriguez checked her secure tablet. Ground operations can begin in 8 minutes. My people are already in position on every Zephyrian world. They're just waiting for the signal. General Stone nodded. Fleet operations will commence as soon as our ships reach their targets. The closest units should be in position within 4 hours. Jake felt something cold and determined settling in his chest. His son was dead, but Danny's sacrifice was about to mean something. The boy's death would not be forgotten, and the aliens who killed him would learn exactly what human fury looked like. Admiral, Jake said, requesting permission to join the assault on New Haven. I want to be there when we take that planet back. Admiral. Park studied his face through the communication link. She could see the pain and anger in his eyes, but she could also see the cold determination that made Jake Martinez one of the best officers in the human military. Permission granted, Colonel. Take whatever ships you need. The communication network began to shut down as officers returned to their commands to begin the largest military operation in human history. But before the screens went dark, Admiral Park spoke one more time. Gentlemen and ladies, she said, addressing every human military officer who had watched Danny Martinez die. Let's teach these aliens what happens when they murder our children. The screens went black and Jake Martinez began preparing for war. 8 light years away, his son's body was growing cold on a metal platform. But in 8 minutes, 17 Zephyrian worlds would begin to burn, and the galaxy would learn that humans protected their young with a fury that could destroy civilizations. 8 minutes was not very long to change the fate of 17 star systems, but humans had been preparing for this moment longer than the Zephyrians realized. What the gray-skinned aliens did not understand about humans was their ability to plan for the worst while hoping for the best. For 3 years, ever since the first Zephyrian attacks on human colonies, secret preparations had been made for the day when normal military response would not be enough. Captain Amy Rodriguez sat in her command center on Europa Station watching countdown timers on 17 different screens. Each timer showed how long until simultaneous operations would begin on every Zephyrian-controlled world. 7 minutes and 30 seconds remained. When she activated the communication codes that would wake up sleeper cells across the galaxy, the sleeper cells were not military units in the traditional sense. They were human civilians who had volunteered to stay behind when the Zephyrians conquered their worlds. Teachers, farmers, mechanics, doctors, and shopkeepers who had decided that someone needed to be ready for the day when Earth came to take back what was stolen on New Haven. Maria Santos received the coded message on her hidden radio while she was teaching her underground school. Maria had been a professor of engineering before the invasion, but now she taught human children in secret basements and hidden rooms. The Zephyrians did not want human children to learn science or history, but Maria and others like her made sure the lessons continued. The message was simple. The eagle flies at sunset. Maria had memorized what those words meant 3 years ago. She looked at her 12 students, all between the ages of 8 and 16, and knew that some of them would not survive what was about to happen. But she also knew that staying under Zephyrian rule was not really living at all. Class is over for today, she told the children. Go home and tell your parents that the special day we talked about has arrived. Remember what we practiced. The children scattered through the tunnels that connected the hidden parts of New Haven's underground. Within minutes, coded messages were being passed from parent to child, from neighbor to neighbor, from shop to shop. The message was always the same. 8 minutes until the real war began. 6 minutes remained when Lieutenant Ben Carter activated his coordination protocols. From deep space, Ben commanded a network of intelligence officers who had been watching Zephyrian military movements for years. Every supply route, every patrol schedule, every weakness in their defenses had been carefully mapped and recorded. Ben's team had infiltrated Zephyrian communication networks months ago, but they had been careful not to cause any damage that might be noticed. Instead, they had planted sleeping programs that waited for activation. Computer viruses that would wake up when the right signal was sent. Digital weapons that would turn the aliens' own technology against them. All stations. This is Control, Ben spoke into his secure communicator. Operation Blackout begins in 6 minutes. Confirm readiness status. Responses came back from intelligence officers positioned throughout Zephyrian space. Lieutenant Carol White reported from her hidden base near the industrial world of Kepler 442b. Sergeant Paul Green confirmed readiness from his listening post in the Vega system. Ensign Linda Davis gave the all-clear from her surveillance position near the Zephyrian Command Center on PROX IMA-3. Each officer had spent years preparing for this moment. Each one had watched human civilians suffer under alien rule while gathering the intelligence that would make their freedom possible. Each one was ready to activate systems that would blind, confuse, and cripple Zephyrian military forces across 17 worlds. 5 minutes remained when Dr. Helen Wright made her final preparations aboard the research vessel Discovery. Helen was not a soldier, but she was one of the most dangerous humans in the galaxy when it came to computer warfare. For 2 years, she had been developing a virus that could spread through any electronic network and cause total system failure. The virus was not just a simple program that deleted files or crashed computers. It was a complex piece of software that could learn and adapt as it spread. It would identify the most important systems on each ship or base and attack them first. Life support, navigation, weapons control, and communication would all fail within minutes of infection. Helen had tested smaller versions of the virus on captured Zephyrian equipment, but she had never released the full program. It was too dangerous to use unless the situation was desperate enough to justify causing massive destruction. Watching Dani Martinez die on live television had convinced her that the situation was exactly that desperate. Virus deployment ready, she reported to Captain Rodriguez. All network entry points are identified and targeted. Estimated infection time for full Zephyrian fleet is 12 minutes after initial deployment. 4 minutes remained when Major Sue Palmore positioned her stealth destroyer Shadow at the edge of the Vega system. Sue's ship was invisible to Zephyrian sensors, and she had been watching their supply convoys for weeks without being detected. The aliens moved their cargo ships on predictable schedules. Never imagining that human vessels were tracking their every movement, Sue's mission was to eliminate Zephyrian supply lines as quickly as possible. Food, ammunition, fuel, and replacement parts all had to travel between star systems on cargo ships that were lightly defended. Once those ships were destroyed, Zephyrian forces would be cut off from everything they needed to maintain their occupation. All weapon systems armed and ready, Sue reported to her crew. Target packages confirmed for 17 supply convoys. We'll hit them so fast they won't have time to send distress signals. 3 minutes remained when civilians across 17 worlds received their final instructions. The messages came through hidden radios, secret computer networks, and coded signals that looked like normal commercial broadcasts. But every human under Zephyrian occupation understood what the messages meant. On Kepler 442b, factory workers prepared to sabotage the industrial equipment they had been forced to operate for their alien masters. They had been secretly weakening crucial systems for months, and now it was time to finish the job. Power plants would fail, manufacturing centers would explode, and transportation networks would collapse all at the same time. On Proxima 3, farmers activated hidden explosive charges they had planted in grain silos and water treatment facilities. The Zephyrians had forced human colonists to grow food for the alien military, but the farmers had been planning their revenge since the first day of occupation. Soon the aliens would discover what happened when they depended on enslaved humans for survival. 2 minutes remained when all human military forces reached their final positions. Captain Ron Blake's dreadnought Vengeance was hidden behind an asteroid field, ready to emerge and attack the main Zephyrian fleet base. Dozens of other human warships waited in similar positions throughout the 17 systems, invisible to alien sensors but ready to strike with overwhelming force. The coordination required for simultaneous attacks across such a vast area was almost impossible to achieve. But humans had spent 3 years preparing for this moment, and every detail had been planned and practiced until it became automatic. 1 minute remained when Colonel Jake Martinez received confirmation that all forces were ready. His son's death had triggered the largest military operation in human history, and now 17 worlds would pay the price for that single act of cruelty. Jake thought about Danny's last words. Tell him I remembered the lesson. The lesson Jake had taught his son was that bullies only understood force, and that sometimes good people had to fight back harder than seemed fair or reasonable. Danny had remembered that lesson even while facing death, and now his father was about to teach it to an entire alien empire. 30 seconds remained when the final countdown began. Across human space, military officers and civilian volunteers checked their weapons one last time. Computer viruses prepared to activate. Explosive charges armed themselves automatically. Starships powered up their weapon systems and prepared for battle. 10 seconds. 5 seconds. 3, 2, 1. At exactly 8 minutes after Danny Martinez died on live television, 17 Zephyrian worlds discovered what human fury really looked like. The boy's death had been broadcast as a symbol of alien power, but it became the signal for humanity's most devastating military response in history. The galaxy was about to learn that killing human children was the fastest way to wake up humanity's capacity for total war. At exactly 8 minutes after Danny Martinez died, 17 worlds began to burn on the industrial world of Kepler 442b. Factory worker Tom Wilson walked calmly to the main power control room where he had worked for 6 months under Zephyrian supervision. The alien guards knew him well and barely looked up when he entered the restricted area. They had no idea that Tom had been a demolitions expert in the Earth. Military before the invasion. Tom placed his hand on the main power coupling and activated the small explosive device hidden in his palm. The blast was not large, but it was precisely placed to cause a chain reaction through the entire power grid. Within seconds, every factory, military base, and command center on Kepler 442b went dark. The explosion killed Tom instantly, but he had known that would happen when he volunteered for the mission. His sacrifice plunged an entire world into darkness and brought all Zephyrian manufacturing to a complete stop. At the same moment, similar explosions erupted across the industrial centers of Kepler 442b. Human workers who had pretended to cooperate with their alien masters revealed their true purpose. Power plants exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Manufacturing equipment melted into useless metal. Transportation networks collapsed as bridges and tunnels were destroyed by hidden charges. The Zephyrian garrison commander on Kepler 442b, General Kexmore, rushed to his communications center to call for help. But when he tried to activate his equipment, nothing happened. The power grid that supported his entire military operation was gone, and his soldiers were trapped in darkened bunkers with no way to coordinate their response. On the agricultural world of Proxima 3, Farmer Bob Taylor stood in the central grain storage facility that fed the entire Zephyrian occupation force. He had been forced to grow food for the aliens who had killed his neighbors and enslaved his community. But Bob had been adding something extra to the grain shipments for months. Something that would not hurt humans but would make Zephyrians very sick. More importantly, Bob had spent his nights planting explosive charges throughout the storage facility. When the signal came, he activated all of them at once. The explosion was visible from orbit as millions of tons of grain burst into flames. Every food storage center on Proxima 3 erupted in similar explosions within minutes. The water treatment plants failed next. Human engineers who had been maintaining the systems under alien supervision revealed the sabotage they had been carefully preparing. Pumps seized up and broke apart. Filters became clogged with debris. Chemical treatment systems began producing poison instead of clean water. Within hours, the Zephyrian garrison on Proxima 3 found themselves without food or clean water. The alien soldiers had never learned to farm or maintain their own supply systems because they had always depended on enslaved humans to do that work for them. In the Vega system, Major Sue Palmer brought her stealth destroyer Shadow out of hiding. and began hunting Zephyrian supply ships like a wolf attacking a flock of sheep. Her ship's advanced cloaking technology made her invisible to alien sensors until she was close enough to fire. The first target was a massive cargo vessel carrying ammunition to 3 different Zephyrian military bases. Sue's torpedoes struck the ship's cargo holds, and the ammunition inside exploded in a chain reaction that could be seen from several light years away. The explosion was so bright that it temporarily blinded the sensors of nearby Zephyrian patrol ships. Sue's crew worked with mechanical precision, moving from target to target without wasting time or ammunition. Each supply ship died in a few seconds of concentrated fire, taking with it the food, fuel, or weapons that some Zephyrian base desperately needed. Target 17 destroyed, reported Sue's weapons officer, Lieutenant Gary Hayes. No survivors detected. No distress signals transmitted. Excellent, Sue replied. Move to the next shipping lane. Let's see how long the Zephyrians can fight. Without supplies? Meanwhile, Dr. Helen Wright's computer virus spread through Zephyrian networks like digital fire. The virus had been designed to hide itself until it reached critical systems, and now it revealed its true purpose. Navigation computers began giving false readings. Weapon targeting systems started shooting at empty space. Life support systems shut down without warning on the Zephyrian command ship Dominator. Admiral Wachter watched in horror as his fleet began to fall apart around him. Ship after ship went dark as their computer systems failed. Those vessels that still had power found their weapons pointing in random directions, their engines refusing to respond to commands. What is happening to our ships? Admiral Wachter demanded of his technical staff. Unknown, sir, his chief engineer replied, frantically trying to diagnose the problem. All our computer systems are malfunctioning simultaneously. It appears to be some kind of coordinated attack on our networks. The Admiral tried to contact his bases on the occupied worlds, but most of his communication systems had also been infected by the virus. The few messages that got through brought terrible news. Every world under Zephyrian control was reporting massive system failures, coordinated uprisings, and complete breakdowns in military command. On New Haven, the world where Danny Martinez had died 8 minutes earlier, the uprising began in the town square where the boy's body still lay on the metal platform. Maria Santos emerged from the underground tunnels, carrying a weapon she had built from farming equipment and stolen Zephyrian technology. Behind her came dozens of other humans who had been hiding in the tunnels since the invasion began. Teachers, shopkeepers, mechanics, and farmers, all carrying improvised weapons and burning with fury over the murder of an innocent child. The Zephyrian soldiers, guarding the town square, were caught completely off guard. They had grown used to controlling humans through fear, and they never expected organized resistance. The aliens fired their plasma weapons, but the humans had studied Zephyrian tactics for months and knew how to avoid the worst of their firepower. Commander Vexstar, who had executed Danny Martinez to demonstrate Zephyrian power, found himself trapped in his command bunker as human fighters surrounded the building. The same colonists he had thought were beaten and helpless were now hunting him with military precision. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're receiving reports from all our bases. The humans are attacking everywhere at once. They have weapons and explosives we didn't know they possessed. Impossible, Commander Vexstar snarled. These are farmers and teachers, not soldiers. They cannot coordinate attacks across multiple worlds. But the evidence was clear on his tactical displays. Every Zephyrian installation on New Haven was under attack. The humans had revealed hidden weapons, secret communication networks, and military knowledge that they had somehow kept concealed for months. In space above the planet, Captain Ron Blake's dreadnought Vengeance emerged from behind an asteroid and opened fire on the Zephyrian fleet base. The massive human warship had been hiding within sensor range for weeks, watching and waiting for the right moment to strike. Blake's ship carried enough firepower to destroy entire cities, and he used all of it against the alien fleet base. Torpedo after torpedo slammed into Zephyrian ships that were still trying to understand why their computer systems had failed. The aliens never had a chance to mount an organized defense. "All weapons, continuous fire," Captain Blake ordered his crew. "I want every gray-skinned alien in this system to understand what happens when they murder human children." The pattern was repeated across all 17 star systems. Human forces that had been hiding in the shadows for months revealed themselves and struck with coordinated fury. Civilian resistance fighters destroyed critical infrastructure. Military vessels eliminated alien supply lines and fleet bases. Computer viruses crippled enemy communications and weapons systems. The Zephyrians had thought they were fighting scattered groups of defeated colonists. Instead, they discovered they were facing the full military and technological might of humanity, focused into a single moment of devastating retaliation. By the end of the first hour, most Zephyrian military forces were dead, scattered, or trapped. Without supplies or communication, the alien empire that had seemed so powerful when executing a 15-year-old boy was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. Danny Martinez's death had triggered exactly the response his father had taught him to expect from bullies. When you hurt someone that humans cared about, they would hit back harder than you ever imagined possible. 24 hours after Danny Martinez died on live television, the Zephyrian Empire no longer existed as a fighting force. What had once been 17 controlled worlds were now either liberated by human forces or abandoned by fleeing alien troops who had finally understood what they were really fighting. Admiral Wachter sat alone in his damaged command ship, watching the last reports come in from his scattered forces. Every military base had been destroyed or captured. Every supply line had been cut. Every communication network had been infected with the human virus that turned Zephyrian technology against itself. The Admiral's fleet of 200 warships had been reduced to 12. Damaged vessels that barely had enough power to maintain life support. His ground forces of 50,000 soldiers had either been killed in the fighting or were trapped on planets with no food, water, or ammunition. The empire that had seemed so strong when executing a human child was now broken beyond repair. "Sir," his remaining communications officer reported, "we're receiving surrender offers from our surviving bases. They want permission to abandon their positions and retreat to Zephyrian space." Admiral Wachter stared at the tactical display that showed the complete destruction of his military command. In less than one day, the humans had demonstrated a capacity for coordinated warfare that no Zephyrian leader had thought possible. They had not just defeated the occupation forces, they had destroyed them so completely that rebuilding would take decades. "Grant permission for full retreat," the Admiral said quietly. "All surviving units are to withdraw from human space immediately." On New Haven, Commander Vextar crouched in his reinforced bunker as human fighters moved through the building above him. The commander who had seemed so powerful while executing Danny Martinez was now trapped like an animal, waiting for the hunters to find his hiding place. The bunker's defensive systems had failed hours ago when the human computer virus infected his security networks. His communications were dead, his weapons were offline, and his ventilation system was pumping in smoke from the fires. Burning throughout his command center, Vextar could hear human voices getting closer. They were not shouting or running around randomly like frightened civilians. Instead, they moved with military precision, checking each room systematically and coordinating their search through radio communications. These were not the weak farmers and teachers he had thought he was ruling. These were trained fighters who had been pretending to be helpless while planning his destruction. The bunker door exploded inward with a blast that knocked Vextar to the floor. Through the smoke and debris, a figure stepped into the room wearing the dark uniform of an Earth military officer. Commander Vextar recognized the face from intelligence reports. Colonel Jake Martinez, the father of the boy he had executed. Jake's expression was completely calm as he looked down at the alien commander who had murdered his son. There was no anger visible on his face, no emotion at all. He looked like a man who had come to finish a job that needed to be done. "You wanted to teach us about fear," Jake said, his voice steady and quiet. "Let me show you what human children learn from their fathers." Vexstar tried to reach for his weapon, but Jake was faster. The human colonel had spent 30 years learning how to fight aliens who were stronger and tougher than humans. He knew exactly where to strike to cause maximum damage with minimum effort. The fight lasted less than 10 seconds. When it was over, Commander Vexstar lay dead on the bunker floor, and Jake Martinez stood over the body of the alien who had killed his son. "That was for Danny," Jake said to the empty room. Then he activated his radio and reported to his command team. "Target eliminated. New Haven Command Center is secure." Across the 17 liberated worlds, similar scenes played out as human forces hunted down the Zephyrian commanders who had thought they were safe behind their walls and weapons. The aliens discovered that humans could be patient hunters when they had good reason to seek revenge. Within 3 days, every major Zephyrian leader in human space was either dead or captured. Those who survived did so only because they had been smart enough to run away before the human forces found them. The speed and completeness of the human victory shocked other alien civilizations throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrians had been considered one of the stronger military powers, and their occupation of human worlds had seemed secure. No one had expected them to be defeated so quickly and so thoroughly. Emergency meetings were called in alien capitals. Across known space, military leaders who had been planning their own attacks on human territory suddenly decided that other targets might be more suitable. Diplomatic representatives began drafting messages of friendship and cooperation to send to Earth. The Rigelian High Council, which had been considering an alliance with the Zephyrians, immediately voted to establish peaceful trade relations with humanity instead. The Andromedan Trade Federation canceled all military exercises near human space and offered to negotiate mining rights rather than simply taking what they wanted. Most importantly, the surviving Zephyrian leaders sent desperate warnings to anyone who would listen. The messages were always similar: never threaten human children, never broadcast their deaths for entertainment, and never assume that human restraint means human weakness. Admiral Lisa Park stood in her command center on Earth, reading the final reports from Operation Fury Protocol. The numbers were almost unbelievable. 17 worlds liberated in less than 72 hours. An entire alien empire destroyed with minimal human casualties. The most successful military operation in Earth's history. "Admiral," General Kevin Stone said, joining her at the main tactical display. "All human worlds report free and clear of Zephyrian forces. Our casualty reports are final: 43 military personnel killed in action, 112 wounded. Enemy casualties are estimated at over 40,000. Admiral Park nodded. The price had been paid almost entirely by the aliens who had started the war by murdering an innocent child. "What's the status of our liberated civilians?" "All former prisoners are accounted for and receiving medical attention," General Stone replied. "Food and supply shipments are already en route to worlds that suffered under occupation. Full restoration of civilian government should be complete within 2 weeks." The Admiral looked at the tactical display showing human space now completely free of alien occupation for the first time in 3 years. The victory had been total and decisive, but it had started with the death of one 15-year-old boy who had refused to show fear in the face of alien cruelty. Captain Amy Rodriguez entered the command center carrying a report from her intelligence teams. "Admiral, we're receiving communication requests from over 30 alien civilizations. They all want to establish diplomatic relations and assure us of their peaceful intentions." "I'm sure they do," Admiral Park said with a slight smile. "Draft responses emphasizing our preference for peaceful cooperation, but make sure they understand that we will respond to any threats against human civilians with the same level of force we just demonstrated." The final report from Operation Fury Protocol was brief and direct. Admiral Park transmitted it to all human military commands, civilian governments, and any alien civilizations that had been monitoring human communication networks. The Zephyrian Empire's occupation of human worlds has been terminated. All human colonies are free and secure. This operation serves as notice to any other civilizations considering hostile action against human civilians. We will protect our people, especially our children, with whatever force is necessary. Danny Martinez's execution had been broadcast across the galaxy as a demonstration of alien power over human weakness. His death became the catalyst for humanity's emergence as the most feared military force in known space. The boy who died to make an alien point about human softness became the symbol of what happened when anyone was stupid enough to threaten human families. His father's 8-minute response became the standard by which military efficiency was measured throughout the galaxy. The galaxy learned a lesson that would be remembered for generations. Humans protected their young with a fury that could destroy empires, and anyone who forgot that lesson would pay the price that the Zephyrians had paid. Danny Martinez was gone, but his legacy lived on in the freedom of 17 worlds and the respect that every alien civilization now showed to humanity's children.